it was really the lowest of lows, and I didn't know it at the time. But my kids living in the basement, and my house I had to pay dad for rent, and my parents were employing me. I was a prodigal child, and I never thought that I would be that ever. Let's talk about it. Welcome to How to Switch to a Tech Career in Your 30s and 40s. It's the podcast where we love to get excited and down to brass tacks, talking about the real things that help you move the needle when you switch from any other career into a high-tech or IT career. And this is where we're going to discuss the real hints, tips, tricks, and the methods and the protocol that help you switch into a real tech career. So welcome. The title of this episode is How God Saved Me from Poverty. And I would say that it's kind of a title to get you to listen, but it's not just a bait. It is really, truly what happened to me. And so I want to talk about how God just allowed me to sort of wake up and he started to humble me in such a way that I had to make some changes, and it really didn't feel good. And maybe this is encouraging to you or some of the other people out there who are trying to switch to a tech career, but you really struggle with the feeling of having to go through so many changes just to get what you think everybody else has. See, let's go back in my story a little bit and see if this is helpful to you. So I currently, let's start with right here. I currently am working as an iOS developer, also called an iOS engineer. So I build apps, and currently the company I work with is an international company. It wasn't always super international, but it is now. I'm very thankful to have my job. And I think that it's a job that people could still switch into, but I really never thought that I would be in this place of being able to own my own home and being able to help others. And along the way, really, what's happened is I was helped by a lot of people. And I think that everybody is helped in some way by a lot of people. And they may not understand it or recognize it, but that's what it took. That's what God had to do to me in order to make me a man who is able to advance. I think that left to my own devices, I would still not have a full time job, to be honest. And I've always struggled with business. I've always struggled with making income. And early in my life, in my adult life, I did ministry full time, and I wasn't making enough money. So just want to take you back in my story to see if it's encouraging to you, and that's the only reason I share, is because maybe God can use a part of my story to encourage you or to direct you somewhere. So I got married in college. I was on a violin scholarship to the University of Northern Iowa. And during that time, on my violin scholarship, that means basically I lived at home at my parents' house. Um, and I think I actually lived with a buddy, Dave, for part of this time. Yeah, when I was engaged. But anyway, I got married in college and I was on a violin scholarship. So all of my tuition was paid by just playing violin for the orchestra. And because of that, I didn't have an overwhelming amount of debt piling up from the University of Northern Iowa. But I did have some debt because I had gone to Bible college, and that was a lot of money for me. I think my parents helped me take out a loan, and I certainly had to pay that off later. But just to point out, one of the things I was doing at the time, I had a band. It was a Christian band with my brother and a couple friends, and I always wanted to make it big. And that's still a pride struggle for me today, is trying to make it big. And I realize it's all about me. My wife tells me it's always about you, Brooks, and I don't see it. but I think I'm seeing it more and more, and I'm 50 now. So it's about time. But I'm sure if God lets me live to 60, I'll look back and say, well, I didn't know anything at 50. But because of my violin scholarship, I really didn't work that hard. So I played violin in college and I took computer science as a minor. I started it, but then it kind of got away. And I as a newly married man, I really, frankly, it didn't have enough time to become a professional violinist, even though later on I became one. Um, but it just didn't work that hard at things. And so I took ministry jobs, and God did call us down to South Carolina, and I took a job there, and I was making we had a kid at the time, and I was making 16,000 a year. This is $16,000 in almost 30 years ago money. So maybe it's like having a job for 30,000 today with a wife and child, and the wife stays at home. So it really was not a lot of money, and started digging into more debt. And then um, many things happened with the church. We even started another church there in Georgia, and then we moved to Nashville, and I didn't go there with a job. So I learned the first huge lesson is you don't change places without getting a job first, and this is before remote work. So have at least a remote position in line when you're moving somewhere. Everyone in the pandemic probably had a remote position when they moved everywhere in the country. Moved to Nashville, did violent things, and I was still trying to make a name for myself. And I would never admit that that's what I was trying to do, but that's what I was trying to do. I wasn't really looking to serve. I was looking to, um, honestly, provide for the family. But the mechanism, the instrument for that, or the mechanism, was to become a really famous songwriter or violinist. And I've never admitted that to everybody before. So there you go. So there's my pride showing up, and things worked out pretty well, but not for my wife. She was stuck at home, and we had another child, and then we had to move to actually get a higher paying position. I did have a couple jobs there in Nashville. We moved to Des Moines, Iowa, and you're getting my history. But when we moved again, it was a ministry job, so it really wasn't paying enough. And that's okay. God called us to do it, but I really was trying to figure out how to make things work. And during that time, that's when I started, if you're following my story at all, that's when I started doing a little bit of development on my own. So I had always liked computers a little bit. I still to this day have a love hate relationship with them. I use them to get things done. And I was using it to put together this idea I had for this huge website, which was like um, basically a Zillow before there was Zillow. So it was a really nice idea, and some people jumped in, but I didn't make a lot of money. What I did learn was how to put together a website. And so that was the start of how I got into tech. Um, but still, it didn't make any money. So I lost a lot of money in that. And then I had to move home. And this is where moving home meant moving into one of my parents' rental properties and paying them rent. This is where I started to, now with 3 children, I started to just go all into trying to make websites and making money off the websites. And I made a little bit of money here and there, but I really learned how to code, that's for sure. And then God opened up a door through uh, a guy, as you may know my story. When I was working at Starbucks, I was really working 3 or 4 jobs, and my parents had cut me from my job working for them. I was teaching real estate seminars, moving around the state of Iowa, traveling around, not moving around, traveling around and teaching real estate seminars as a licensed salesperson and working under the guise of a instructor. And I did pretty well at that again, but my parents let me go. They they clearly didn't want a big business running. They wanted a very simple business, and I was frankly, that was humbling. And maybe you've had times like that where you have been humbled by parents or people that you love, and it doesn't feel like humbling at the moment. It feels like you're angry and you don't understand why. And I clearly did not understand why, and I still don't understand why to this day. There was no logical reason to let me go. But there I was. The situation at the moment was I had a real estate license, I had an insurance license, selling Aflac. I was working at Starbucks. I was also um, working with a church, trying to get a church started, and I was trying to piece together everything to pay the bills every month. Um, and I mean, it was a sad situation. And if you look back, you can say that, but at the moment, it didn't feel like it's sad. So, is there another thing is, some of my kids were living in the basement of the rental house with this square carpeting to try to cover the concrete, and they were in bunk beds. And my kids will probably never say that it was a horrible upbringing, but it wasn't the best. And I look back and I say I could have probably prevented some of this. So, are you locked into a situation right now, um, where it's time to wake up? Is it time for you to really look around at your surroundings, at your income, at your debt, look at your family, how they're living, what they're living in, um, look at how much you're able to give every month to your church or to help other people around the world, even because we're very blessed here in America, extremely blessed with finances and resources. Is this a time where you need to step up and you need to just wake up and say, wow, what am I doing? And maybe part of the humbling fact is maybe you've been look back at your last 3 years and say, what have I been doing to get this Tech career? What have I been doing to learn programming or learn how to be a UX designer? What what have I to show for what I've been doing after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of doing whatever you're doing? For me, I have no ground to stand and judge you because it was 7 years between the time when I bought my first book to learn how to program, and when I got a steady job or a steady income. Let's call it a steady income. It was 7 years, probably 6.5 if I really do the math, but it took that long. And so if you're struggling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, hey, I know what that feels like. If it's been 10 years, 20 years, it's probably just something you've never even tried to do. Or if you have, there's just probably something you don't see yet that other people could probably point out to you. So I want to encourage you to be humble and to reach out to people for help. Excuse me. And um, just person to person here. Why are you trying to switch into a tech career? Why are you trying to get a steady job in tech? And if your why is not big enough, if it doesn't include people outside of you and even outside of your family, I would just say that there's probably not enough um, force or power behind your why for you to even advance. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's possible that God is humbling you. If you're a Christian, then you know what I'm talking about. If you're not a Christian, maybe you're just, it's time for you to just kind of look at the evidence and say, maybe I need a little more humility here. Now, if you're hearing me say that about humility and you're saying, well, that's not very nice of him to say that, he should be lifting me up in this episode. Well, I am trying to lift you up because here's the deal. Just like me in my situation, I went through some of my dark times with you where I was humbled to the point of feeling like a prodigal son. And then being let go from my own parents' business, um, maybe it's time for you to look at that and say, "Wow, that humbled him. That was very difficult for Brooks." And so I'm not trying to put you down. I've been through worse situations possibly than many other people. I'm trying to encourage you by saying, look around you and look at the facts and look what you've done so far and say, do you need a little bit of help? Do you need to seriously look around at you and say, do I need to take a baby step here instead of trying to land a 100K engineer job as your first tech job? Do I need to take a baby step, get on a little step stool like you did as a kid? They put that stool up to the sink so you could reach the faucet and wash your hands. Do you need one of those? Do you need to go and explore what it takes to just simply kind of ease into a tech career? Do you need to go out and get a couple more clients? If you're a contractor right now, like I was, trying to sell your web services or marketing services, do you need to just go ask more people that you already know to try to drum up a little more business? So, back to my story, how God saved me from poverty. After I finally had my, this is, my soul was very heavy when my parents let me go. Um, Specifically, my soul felt like I didn't have people to support me. I had to do all the supporting of my wife and soon to be 4 kids, and eventually we had 6, but soon to be 4 kids that same spring. Um, the next spring, I think, actually. But no, we had 4. Yeah, we had 4, soon to be 5. Sorry. But my soul was very heavy and I felt very dark. And if I didn't have, Jesus to focus on, I know that I would have given up on more than just getting into tech. But I didn't have an aim to get into a tech career. My desire still was so much so to make it on my own as a business, selling websites. And then when my parents let me go and I had to go work at Starbucks, every day at Starbucks, I was just looking around saying, what am I doing? What am I doing? Sure, I poured my heart out at Starbucks and won an award there. I can say that I was a hard worker at Starbucks, but at the same time, it just wasn't paying the bills. So finally, when someone said, "Hey, did you know this company over there is hiring?" Um, I said, "Well, I can't. I can't. I'm not good enough for that." And I honestly felt like I didn't want to go take a job because I felt like a job was settling. I wanted a business. I did go interview, and by God's grace, Wade hired me, and I got my first tech job. And um, yeah, since then, the way God saved me from poverty was not right away. Didn't fix all my problems when I got my first job, but through that, and then the depression of 2008, and all of that up till today, God has taken years to help me not be at that low level of food stamps, frankly, is where I was back when I first got married and for several years. So if you're struggling, if you're getting, WIC, if you're using WIC, if you're on food stamps, if you're at the poverty line and you're trying to get into tech, I would encourage you, do what you can to take baby steps to get into tech instead of setting a super high goal that you can never achieve. And if you do that, if you reverse engineer your plan a little bit, I know you're going to have success. And along with it, God's going to show you a little humility and the strength and humility that there is. So I hope that was encouraging. And I appreciate you for letting me open up my soul and my heart to you as God keeps working in this guy on this side of the mic. How to Switch to a Tech Career in Your 30s and 40s is the podcast that tries to help you switch into a tech career, no matter what your background is, give you some support and some encouragement along the way. Now, if you're stuck and you need some help, give me an email at info@techlead.com, info@tekleed.com, all spelled wrong. And if you're looking for a Facebook group to get involved in or anything else, you can look at the show notes and we got some info down there. Until next time, my name is Brooks Haynes and I've been your host today, and I thank you for listening. From the shores of the Vermilion River in southeastern Minnesota, have a good day.